My name's Greg. I'm an addict. Let me get some brains here. Okay. I like to do workshops in the 12th tradition. I've done quite a number of them. I have a lot of fun with them, and probably the most exciting part of it is that with the 12th tradition we can tie the traditions into a real clear package. And we can, I think, lay some sense to a lot of the other traditions by looking at the 12th tradition, by looking at that anonymity as the spiritual foundation of all our traditions. I approach this tradition from that way rather than from the ass end, because it's really neat, because it's fun, and because it's real meaningful to me. I think through looking at the 12th tradition I really began to understand the rest of the traditions a little better, through looking at anonymity, which is another one of those catchwords we use. Anonymity, we throw it around, it's part of our name. At the end of the meeting, somebody will say, remember our 12th tradition? They forget about our 11th tradition, which is really the one that deals with outsiders. They missed the point on the 12th, I think, and it's lost a lot of its meaning, but I think perhaps it's the most important principle we have, or just about. Definitely one of the most important. And it's really an exciting concept. I'm going to start out by talking about that. I think that the 11th tradition, which also uses the word anonymity, is dealing with anonymity as we relate outside the fellowship. I think the 12th tradition is internal anonymity. It's the type of anonymity that some years ago motivated a group of trusted servants to form a worldwide home group, or lack of anonymity, because they weren't allowed to be NA members, because they were so separated and made different in their meetings that they had to seek help from each other at a different level. Anonymity, to find a level where they could achieve some measure of equality and anonymity. Okay, the definition that we read in the book, which is as good as any, I guess, as a starting point, was the condition of bearing no name, or something like that. Okay, what does that mean? Bearing no name, nameless. Well, what are names for? Well, we use names to identify ourselves, right? My name is Greg. It's my name. If you add my last initial, Greg P., there are a lot of Gregs in the world. Not a lot, but there's quite a few Gregs in the world. If you add the last initial, then you're going to cut that number by, 1/26 or something like that. It makes it a little more manageable number of people. And if you add my whole last name, Greg Pierce, that really identifies me pretty well. There aren't a lot of Greg Pierces. And if you add other information about me, you can tie it down even closer than that, can't you? The point I'm trying to make is that we use names to set us up as unique, definable, specifiable people, don't we? To single us out and identify us. Okay. With that definition, if we carry it through, bearing no name, it seems to me that that would mean that anonymity, or a person who bears no name, is not singled out and separated from, and not a special, unique entity. Defined, described, there it is. I like to look at anonymity as setting aside all those things we use to separate ourselves. Whether that's name, and that's probably the most common. But what about all those other things? Well, there's Joe. He's a carpenter. Or so-and-so, and they do this, and they do that. That's one way we qualify people, isn't it? Another way we qualify people is by the way they dress. Another way we qualify people is by sex. Another way we qualify people is by what kind of car they drive, whether they put a quarter in the basket or $1 or $10. We qualify people by all kinds of things, don't we? And that's into that dynamic of addiction where, we immediately will make assumptions about a person and categorize them and label them and rubber stamp them and set them off in a corner just in case we ever have to deal with them. We're all prepared. We know how to react, right? It's the old put me in a room with another human being and I automatically got a problem. I don't know who to be. Till I get some information about them, then I know who to be. And I will be whoever I'm supposed to be with that person. It's part of my addiction. I will chameleon myself right in that role, and I will treat different people different ways. That's a violation of the principle of anonymity. To me, what this tradition is saying at its most basic is that when we get together in our groups, the preamble, keep what we have only with vigilance and justice, freedom for the individual, comes from the 12 steps, so freedom for the groups springs from our traditions. When we get together to fulfill our primary purpose in our groups, it doesn't matter who we are and what we do. It doesn't matter how much money we got. It doesn't matter whether we're male or female. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. What matters is that we're addicts seeking recovery. In our meetings, we pretty simply identify as that. My name is Greg. I'm an addict. That doesn't tell you what I do for a living, does it? It doesn't tell you what kind of car I drive. It doesn't tell you whether I got $2 or $100 in my pocket. All it tells you is that I'm an addict. And I'm seeking recovery by virtue of being there. And I think that's where we belong, but we have a hard time with that. Because we feed right into that. We want quick, simple answers to people, throw them off in. I think that all stems from our self-obsession. We have to be perfect, one way or another. We have to be able to relate. I have trouble with that. Anonymity, I think that's what the key issue is. Okay, I want to look at all the traditions based on that idea that what we're talking about is setting aside all those things to separate us, because it'll work. You can go through all the traditions and take a look at them and pick out things that tie in with that. And I want your help. Okay, this is a workshop. I don't believe in, it's not a lecture. If they wanted a lecture, they would have called it a lecture. I could have done that too, but this is a workshop. And the idea is so we all can think and learn. Who there has a program? Anybody in here have a program or a book? Okay, here are a couple of more books. Why don't you guys, if you don't have a program or a book, take one. Come on up and take one. I want you to have a list of the traditions in front of you in writing. Spread them out and we'll do it by that. Everybody got something to work with? Jim, you better get something. I don't think you can remember them. Okay, everybody got something to work with. Let's look at that first tradition. What are the things in that tradition that point to this concept of anonymity. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. Does anything in there tie in with the idea of setting aside our differences and becoming equal?
The fact that we are anonymous and not identifying or defining ourselves. My name is Mike. I'm an addict.
Hey, Mike.
The fact that we are anonymous and not defining or identifying ourselves, we're setting down all of our uniquenesses and our differences and leaving only the unifying or the thing we have in common is that we are addicts seeking recovery.
Okay. There are two words in there. Common is, and unity. They're real obvious, aren't they? Expressions of that. It's going to be terrible, I know, because I walk and I gesture. Okay. Is there anything else in that first tradition? Our common welfare should come first. Not my welfare, not what I need, not my individual needs. Even though they used to say, if you ain't got nothing to put in the basket, take a little bit out. Dave?
I'm Dave, I'm an addict.
Hey, Dave.
But it says, recovery depends on unity, which is that anonymous principle.
Yeah, unity is what does unity mean? It means one. It means the same. It means together. It doesn't mean individual. That's real obvious. That first, some of the other traditions are a little less obvious. The first tradition is really an obvious example of anonymity in action. Unity is all about anonymity. Being one. Not being different. Not being separate. It's all about being one. Okay, what about the second tradition? For our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority. A loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. Jim?
Thanks, Jim, and I'm the addict. And to me, this introduces a concept that's normally considered as a personal concept and applies it to more than one, a group of people.
Excuse me?
I say to me, the word anonymity expresses itself here. This concept of conscience is normally considered a personal thing. And in this tradition it talks about the conscience of group, a collective conscience, a collective emotion, possibly. Collective spirit.
Okay, the idea of group conscience rather than individual conscience, or consciousness if you want to call it. Dave?
Also in here it says, our leaders are the trusted servants, they do not govern.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of service is really tied up with the thing of anonymity, there being no leaders.
Yeah, what's a servant? You think of a servant as a butler, right? As I don't know. That's the image that comes to my mind. Let's say he's waiting table at a fancy dinner. How does he act? He stands back very quietly with a towel over his arm, and you don't even know he's there, do you? He doesn't have an identity of his own. His identity is his service, and that person brings a course, serves a meal, and sits back and takes a look quietly, gets out of the way. The old thing about, you can go ahead and talk in front of them, they're just servants. Is really, taking away their humanity, their individuality, which is anonymity. The whole idea of the servant, the picture we get of a servant. I like to go back to the old movies and stuff like that of a servant. And what did they do? They were anonymous, weren't they? Did not have a personality of their own. They were an extension of whoever they were serving. And what counted was not who they were, but their service. The idea of the servant. And also, we talk about one ultimate authority. That's a unifying type. And we don't have a lot of separate, different ultimate authorities. We just have one. And that again is an expression of that oneness, sameness, anonymity. Okay, what about the third tradition? The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. We don't look at other things, do we? We just look at that one thing that we all have in common. We don't look at, any of the other things, jobs, cars, sex, any of the things. We look at only one thing, the only requirement. Anonymity again, isn't it? Amazing. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. What about that one?
NA as a whole is anonymity. We're all one. One individual group can, in my opinion, have such a strong personality or be so different that it acts as a detriment in carrying the message. If a group doesn't live up to its primary purpose, then it's unable to effectively carry the message of recovery, and it sticks out and it's different, and that makes it apart from the whole.
Yeah, we have pretty clear guidelines as to what our groups can do and can't do. Our groups are not all that different. There are, I guess, some varieties in format, but you go almost anywhere and it feels the same, doesn't it? Or just about. The readings are the same. People stand up and identify as addicts. The topics are recovery related. It's based on putting forth the 12 steps and adhering to the 12 traditions. Groups don't vary much place to place. Formats vary, but groups don't. The magic's still there. That atmosphere of recovery is there. You can go anywhere. Yeah, I can walk. I've been to meetings in 40 states. They're not that different. Sometimes you have a speaker speak first and then you talk about it afterwards. Sometimes you talk about it first and speak afterwards. Sometimes you talk about topics. Sometimes you talk about how it's going. Sometimes the topic's this, sometimes the topic's that. But the feeling's the same. Again, we don't have a lot of differences, do we? But also that idea of autonomy, being able to be self-sufficient, a unit unto itself. That kind of goes against the grain with anonymity, except if you look at it, the reason for that is so that we aren't affected by things that go on in other groups. If we're all pretty much the same, we can all stand our own 2 feet as a group, then if the group next door fails, we don't have to fail. Why? And those addicts there, can find a home with us too. I think the principle of anonymity comes in. I think the most obvious place is that whole, the sameness idea, except in matters affecting other groups or any as a whole. That would be things that would differentiate, wouldn't it? We're a special group. We do this. No, you're an NA group. We all feel special about our home groups. But that's not because they're different. but because we found what we need there. We found what clicked for us there. Let's look at 5. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. Again, one purpose. A sameness. Our groups have but one primary purpose. All our groups, not just the ones here, not just the ones in Georgia, not just the ones in California. Everywhere our groups have one focus, one purpose, which is one of the ways we're the same. It also keeps us on track. And if we're in a meeting thinking about our primary purpose, then we have fewer personality problems. If I'm concerned with the newcomer, the addict who still suffers, my personality, our differences become less important. The old story about two guys who fight like cats and dogs, hate each other, will go on a 12-step call together and be a great team. It's real typical. They set aside their differences. We set aside our differences in a group setting and focus on the primary purpose of carrying the message. Again, real exciting. Okay, 6th tradition. An NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. Does it fit anywhere? Probably the most obvious way we differentiate is money, power, and prestige, isn't it? Isn't that one of the things that we go for when we want to separate and be different and classify someone? Money, property, and prestige. What do they got? What do they do? How much money have they got? Oh, is that a person a good person to talk to or not? Are they special? Huh? Of course, that's one of the primary ways we separate ourselves. One of the primary ways that we discriminate is based on money, property, and prestige. And why does that come out of endorsements and financing or lending? Because it sets whoever's doing that up as special. Look, this is special. We endorse it. An endorsement is saying something is special or implying that something is special. Finance sets us up as, I'm a lender. You owe me. I'm special. I'm different. See, if I owe you, you're not the same as everybody else in the room, are you? Because I owe you. Finance. Lending the name. You can use my name. You guys do such a good job that you can use our name. You're special. We don't let everybody do this, mind you. But you're special. Different. Ties right in with the principle of anonymity. Not doing that. Not differentiating, not setting other people up or other entities up as special, or better, or worse, or richer, or poorer. And it's kind of like the wedding thing, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. Where does it go? In sickness and in health, till death do us part. It sounds like the program, doesn't it? Okay, 7. Every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Dave?
I have a addiction on David. It's, that it's self-supporting. That, to me, this is one of the things that is very ticklish within our fellowship, We're great ones for justifying, going out and rounding up a bunch of people to come to our fundraisers, and that's against what we do. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. We're equal in and that anonymity, that equality, if we are concentrating on our common welfare, then the spirit of anonymity applies in our contributions, in our carrying the message and carrying our own weight. I believe that's how that ties in for me.
Yeah, I think there's something there.
My name is Mike. I'm an addict.
Hey, Mike.
Just as was stated in the sixth tradition, that we don't endorse or finance any related facility or outside enterprise. So it should be that no outside individual or enterprise would endorse, would finance, and thereby implied endorsement of us, and possibly an infusion of some sort of will, ideology, or something.
Sets us up as different. And I think another concept, or special, another concept that ties in here is the concept of self-sacrifice. You know, and you hear about the idea of do something nice for someone and don't tell them you did it. That's anonymity, isn't it? See, I think the seventh tradition goes a long way beyond the money issue. I think it ties in. There are a lot of ways I support Narcotics Anonymous. I'm an active member. I support Narcotics Anonymous as an active member. My presence in meetings is a form of support, along with the dollar bill I put in the basket, above and beyond. Why don't we just send everybody a bill? You know, or have contribution envelopes and keep track of how much everybody gives. That way they can take it off on their taxes. I mean, Joe can give $6,000 and Phil can give $2 over a year's period. And we'll keep track. We'll publish that list so everybody will know. No. We do our giving, we do our supporting anonymously. Because if we didn't do it anonymously, that would be setting ourselves up for differences. The whole idea of passing a basket for the finances. Why do we pass a basket? Because in theory, no one's really watching what you're doing with the basket, and you can't really tell if you put a quarter in or if you pretend to put a quarter in. Can you? It's tough to tell if you got a basket full of change. It's anonymous. It's set up so no one will know what you give. Isn't it? Anonymity. The way we do it is an expression of anonymity. Either that or we'd be posting that list of what everybody's given. Right? I mean, that would make sense. Look, we have our best members are, and we'll give them a certificate at the end of the year for having contributed the most to the group. Right? They're special. They're different. No. Our support is anonymous. It must be. Either that or we'll exclude them. And we'll make it impossible for them to be NA members. 8. Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. Our service centers may non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. What's professional? Professional is someone with special talents, someone with a unique gift, with unique training, someone who is different than the average member. Aren't they? We'll go out and hire specialists, won't we? They're different. Again, the principle of anonymity. When we say our service Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, that's saying we come here and what we give as equals. We don't give as a specialist. We don't have any addict savers. We're all addict savers. We don't have any first-class members and no second-class members, and no third-class members, and no fourth-class members. Even though we like to do that in our heads, we'll do that all day long. Probably doesn't come in here. It probably comes in under another tradition. But when we're talking about first, second, third, fourth-class members, we deny membership. Probably should have talked about it under 3. This whole idea of membership is real. It's a powder keg. 1/3 of the members of Narcotics Anonymous do not have a say what happens in the fellowship. by design, not by situation. They're institutions. They don't get to vote on things that happen in the fellowship, do they? How about medicated members? We were talking about that earlier. Not in here, but outside. We have a number of members that have to take medication, a large number, one form or another. And it depends, I guess, on what kind of medication they take, whether or not they're acceptable or unacceptable, doesn't it? Dave?
David, on that.
Hey, Dave.
You hit it right on the head when you said powder cake. And, we talked about this in Atlanta, and, my feelings about it were like, by God, you've got to be clean from everything. But since then, I wonder about that, I wonder about that because you're talking about the issue of medication. We've never really faced that issue. I think
Either is anyone else.
Yeah. I think the thing that it really says here for me, that the only requirement for membership is a desire, not the ability to stop using.
But it does count.
But it does.
I mean, our perpetual relapses are not treated the same. I'm sorry. We don't treat them the same. We pat them on the back, welcome them back, and say, it wasn't okay, come on back, stay clean this time. Right? This time, read the book. You still got it? If you don't, I'll get you. I mean, we'll do that. But they're not treated the same, are they? Person who's been out there 20 times and back? We don't treat them the same, do we? They're second-class members. They got to prove themselves. They've violated our trust. And they have. They have violated our trust. We trusted them to recover, and they didn't. There's all kinds of categories, I'm hoping we're starting to move out of the differentiation in members between males and females. It seems like we're beginning to do that. There was a time when females were second-class members. Again, anonymity is at the core of that. In our group settings, we can't afford to do that because it separates us. Kind of gotten off the track with that. Same thing is true with the professional. Professional is a person with special talents. They're different. They're specialists.
Take it away.
Are you ready? Okay. Let's look at 9 now. Any as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. What? No hands?
Oh,
You want me to read it again?
tired of raising my
Any as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve.
Again, the organization implies a definition.
Right, organization implies a hierarchy, doesn't it? A separation, a specialization, whatever you want to do it. A differentiation, exactly. That's real obvious in this one. Isn't it amazing how easy it is to fit that definition into all of these? Is there anything else about this one that jumps out? Okay, let's move on. Okay, Dave.
directly responsible to those that serve jumps out for me.
Okay.
We elect, we go back to the concept of, in the second tradition, of trusted servants, as, there, without us getting someone to be on the service board or committee as a trusted servant. We have people that go out there and they vote their own self-will rather than carrying the group conscience as a servant. The group conscience, as I understand it, and is specified in this tradition, says that these committees or service boards are made up of trusted servants that are selfless servants. So they are supposedly under as I understand anonymity, they're probably supposed to vote the way we want them.
Yeah, they serve us, not me. I don't have the GSR of my home group in my hip pocket. He doesn't vote the way I want. He votes the way the group wants. He is directly responsible to those people, not that person. It doesn't say directly responsible to the one he serves. It says directly responsible to those they serve. Yeah, it's a statement of anonymity too, isn't it? 10. NA has no opinion on outside issues, hence the NA might never be drawn into public controversy. That's another way we really separate, don't we? Opinion, outside issues. Back in the 1850s, there was a fellowship, I think middle 1800s, I don't know if it's the 1850s, called, what was it? No, it was the other one. Washingtonian Society. Okay? Middle 1800s. They had 750,000 members, I think. They focused on alcoholism as one of their main issues. They were a little behind the times. They went for the misnomer. We know today that there's no such thing. But anyway, that was their focus, and there were about 750,000 people involved. I think you never hear about them, do you? They got into abolition and temperance, and they had very strong causes, and it split them wide apart. People started to differentiate this group and that group and there and there and there and there, kind of like our and a purist thing now. You might want to think about that in relation to anonymity. But it split them up, and they went down the tubes behind outside issues, behind opinions, because that's another primary way we used to differentiate. You're a Republican or a Democrat, Northerner or Southerner. All kinds of issues and outside stuff involved there. That's how we look for one place we look for differences. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. Well, this uses the word anonymity, so it's got to be there somewhere. The idea of we don't have any spokespeople, we don't have anyone who becomes the symbol for Narcotics Anonymous at a public level. We don't allow ourselves to be set up as different, special. This person is, he's Narcotics Anonymous. Well, he may be Narcotics Anonymous. He is part of it, but he isn't Narcotics Anonymous that we belong to. Again, the purpose of that 11th tradition is to prevent us separated. We don't have any stars. We don't pat people. We have enough trouble with our members that have positions of notoriety in society and separating them. We violate their anonymity. We don't allow them to be regular members, do we? We'll go up and say, "Oh, wow." It's not a regular, we don't do that to Joe Schmuck coming in off the street, do we? No, we violate their anonymity. We don't treat them as equals. We treat them as special. That whole concept of not setting someone up as special is what's behind the 11th tradition. To speak for me at the public level would be to set someone up, separate someone off, and make them special. This is my spokesman. It becomes the person rather than the service. We've got to be careful of that in our representative system too. Are our GSRs allowed to be members? Usually. Our GSRs is considered that far away from the group. How about the ASR of the area? Not too bad. How about the RSR? Whoa. Wait a minute. Special member, huh? How about World H&I chair? Oh, he's better than RSR. And we violate their anonymity because we don't allow them to be equal. I spent a lot of time with service titles. You know, I've been chairman of the board of trustees. I've been chairman of the World Service Conference. I was vice president of the World Service Office at one time. I've been this, I've been that, I've been this. You know, I didn't have any anonymity that damn near killed me. There was a period of time when I couldn't go to an NA meeting as a member, as just a member. And it was the worst time in my recovery. Because I didn't have any place just to be shit-faced Greg. Just to be dope fiend, keep it on by holding on to your seat of your pants. Doing what you can do, faking it, Greg. Because I was this and I was that. People, you know, separated me and set me aside. We're getting into 12th tradition stuff. I think that's 12th tradition rather than 11th tradition. Anonymity within the fellowship. My personality, what I was, my title, came before the principle that I was a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Dave?
Here, I like this tradition. You know, I really had a tough time when I was first coming around with promoting recovery in Narcotics Anonymous, and I've almost hit bottom with that. You know, it's like for me the attraction rather than promotion. That's what brought me to Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't come here to get clean. I didn't know about it before I got here. You know, I came into a meeting strictly by a fluke, you know, of God's will for me in my life, and was attracted to the message of Narcotics Anonymous because there were people there that had worked the principles of this program. And attraction and primary purpose and anonymity, all of these things tie in for me today. You know, it's like if we live our primary purpose, if we place anonymity as the foundation of our traditions, then everybody that comes into narcotics will be attracted to it. And for me, that attraction is what keeps me coming back. Today, I have a program that attracts other people, you know. And for me, I get with people that have recovery and they attract me. And I don't know who they are.
Yeah, the whole attraction rather than promotion thing is really interesting. We've made some mistakes with that. How about a couple of years ago, after when the book just came out, if you come to 4 meetings of our group, we'll give you a basic test. If you don't, we won't. Anybody ever hear that happening? Huh? It happened. Or how about if you become a member of this group, we'll give you a t-shirt. That's happened. That's called promotion. See, we're different. We're part of this group. We're special. You get to have a t-shirt or a book. We will give you something. That's promotion. We do it in our groups. You know, it's kind of weird. There's a fine line there. When we can't make those kind of promises. If you do something special, if you do something different than the run-of-the-mill member, we will give you something. That's promotion. We promise some kind of special treatment, some kind of special favor, if you do a special thing. I mean, that's out and out obvious promotion. That's what promotion is all about. separating violation of anonymity, isn't it? Promotion is a violation of the principle of anonymity. We're treating people differently. The basic text here says, in closing that as soon as I get it here, anonymity in action makes it impossible for principles before Anonymity in action makes it impossible for personalities to come before principles. What that originally said in some of the developmental literature was that principles before personalities is automatic when the principle of anonymity is enforced, or something like that. If you're practicing anonymity, principles before personalities is automatic, because personality, that's the product of all these ways we differentiate and separate, isn't it? A person's personality is a description, is the product of all the differences. And if we're not looking at differences, personality gets real blurry. And then people just become people. And in our groups, we're all the same. In our groups, we're all there for the same reasons. We all follow the same process. It's called the 12 steps. We all abide by the same guidelines of the traditions in our group settings. We all have one focus, one purpose. We all have an equal, undifferentiated opportunity to give and share. That's the principle of anonymity in action. And it runs throughout all the traditions. I've tried out several other definitions of anonymity and they don't fit. It's hard to run through them. There are a couple of these that are slightly awkward, but for the most part they're so obvious and they pop through. And when I go back and I do and sit in on a workshop on one of the traditions, let's say I'm sitting in a workshop on the seventh tradition. We went into that a little bit deeper than some of the others. One of the things I do is look for the anonymity. Where does the anonymity come in? Because it's through anonymity that I can understand the other traditions. If anonymity is a spiritual foundation, then anonymity makes it possible for me to understand what the tradition's really saying. If I look for the anonymity, I can understand the principle of the tradition. The letter and the application and the dotting the I's and crossing the T's may not be there. And that requires further thought. But the basic concept will come through if you look for anonymity in the tradition, whatever tradition you're looking at. And we just went through them real quickly and real simply. And we can see that this principle of setting aside our differences, this principle of equality, this principle of sameness, this principle of oneness, runs as a common thread throughout our traditions. And it's real exciting, and it really makes the traditions alive, and it makes them a package instead of tradition 1 and tradition 5 and tradition 3 and tradition 8. It makes it a continuum and a package that relate and tie together. And that's really all I have on the 12th tradition.